I am in the field today, and that's why it's so beautiful behind me, doing something a little different than what. So it's opposite day. And not only am I not in my own yard, but we're going to talk today about creating and pollinators. But we as an organization spend a lot of time talking to people about how to dissuade wildlife from their area because maybe they have a pet or maybe they have a reason why wildlife in their yard isn't a good thing. But I didn't realize I was leaving out all the people who maybe don't have a pet and really do want to have wildlife in their backyard. And maybe there's certain things that haven't occurred to them. So that's what today's presentation is all about. So the first thing is start with the insects. That's right. So that means you cannot use an exterminator, because if you're using an exterminator to kill one insect, of course, it will be killing all the different kinds of insects, right? So get rid of the exterminator if you want to have a wildlife-friendly yard. That's number one. Also, think about your gardening techniques and how they are affecting the insects in your universe. Are you using a blower every week? That's not good for insects. Are you using electric clippers to trim the bushes? That's not good for insects either. So think about those things. Those things can be really hard on insect populations. What else? Chemicals. Using chemicals on the lawn to make the lawn prettier or grub-free. Wildlife loves grubs, so keep that in mind. And also pesticides, again, anything that you would use in the house or outside of the house to dissuade insects, you need to stop that, right? Okay, what else? Pruning trees. That's one that a lot of people don't think about. And the fire department actually makes it a little bit harder on us by putting their trimming guidelines in a time of year that isn't really best for birds. So get ahead of them, get ahead of the game and trim in the fall when the birds are not nesting. And then that way in the spring, when the fire department is like, hey, get yourself fire ready, you're already fire ready, right? So that's the down low on that. What else? Lights. Okay, so wildlife doesn't like lights. So if you have motion sensing lights or if you have a property that is really well lit, unlight it. Wildlife doesn't like lights. So that is another thing that will help bring the wildlife to you. And oh, you know what else wildlife really loves? Water. Put in a water feature right away. Fountain, pond. Wildlife loves water. So if you are trying to attract wildlife to your yard, add water, right? Because again, at the end of the day, all the reasons, all the things we can use to dissuade wildlife are the same things we can use to attract wildlife. And understanding those things can help you manage your yard better, right? So they're looking for food. Don't feed. It is completely unnecessary to feed to create a wildlife-friendly yard. In fact, it would be detrimental to do so. So don't feed. But things like water and shelter and cover are things that they are looking for. And if you're providing those in your yard, then they will certainly show up for that. So again, no lights. And then if you do have pets, you need to either keep them separate somehow or have an enclosure for them outside where they are not chasing and eating lizards and songbirds, etc. So, and we have all sorts of ideas for this. So if this is an idea that's new to you, email me, right? Catios, doggios, you can do a Google image search. You'll be blown away by the possibilities that not only protect native wildlife, but also protect our family members who are our pets, right? So, and then also, we talked about water a little bit, but I also want you to think about how you're watering, okay? And this is even from personal experience. Like the way I used to water was I would go out there that hose would be on full blast. And many of you probably already have an automatic system, right? And hopefully you're not watering your yards because you've got, you've got a drip system in, or you've got natives, right? Something like that. But if you are watering with a hose, you can't put it on and aim it at, your milkweed, because you're going to put everything. I've learned over the years is when I'm watering, I have in my bushes, right? And that's fine with me. So when I'm watering those bushes, I have to be careful. Insects and spider web and everything all out of there. And also the rabbits. Sometimes I'd be watering the bush and the rabbits would be afraid and they would go running out into the street. So I have to be careful for that. So bushes, I'm careful. When I'm watering the area, I've got a little pollinator area with milkweed and sage, and I also don't go back and forth. I slowly just make one sweep. And I've noticed that sort of helps the lizards not all come jumping out for some reason. If they can anticipate which way it's going and that it's going to where they are, instead of have them running out at me. So, and I'm that kind of person. Or the lizards, right? So, and there's a way to water that is a kinder, gentler way. And, and then of course, wildlife loves bushes. Like I was just talking about, bunnies love to be there. And because the bunnies are there, certainly there are coyotes and bobcats and everything else in the area that would like a bunny, right? Although we don't see a lot of that in my area, thankfully, but it could happen. So, and dark areas again, so no light. And also if you don't go places. So let's say you've got a really big backyard and you wish wildlife would take over. Don't go walking back there all the time, because they can smell your presence. And if they smell that you were there, then they're less likely to hang out. Whereas if they're like, oh, nobody's been here, this is a good place for me to hang out. So, and again, remember that if you're welcoming wildlife, you're also welcoming some of the issues that wildlife brings with, right? Like pooping in the corner, like taking up residence in the attic. We're not going to go there because this is opposite day, and I promise to stay positive about attracting wildlife to your yard that doesn't have pets, right? So I'm still there. And again, whenever I talk about wildlife, I'm always having to incorporate plants into that conversation, and always natives. Natives. If you plant natives in your yard, I guarantee you all of the native insects and native lizards and native songbirds will take up residence in your yard, because that is what they're looking for. And the best news about natives is they barely require any water, and boom, they are just taking over your yard and inviting the local native wildlife. So of course, I'm going to start with insects, and I'm going to end on native plants. So head on over to Theodore Payne after this and pick yourself up something awesome and local and native, right? So anyway, you guys, thank you for spending your Thursday evening with me. As usual, I have had an awesome time. I don't see any questions today, so we're just going to keep moving along, and we will see you again. We're taking next week off, but we will see you again after that. And you can look in our newsletter, because we are going to have a whole new array of topics. We're going to be talking about books. We're going to have guests. August and September are going to be awesome with Teranga Ranch. So stay tuned. Good night, everybody. Don't move it yet.